Good morning, good evening. Welcome. Welcome to PSHS 6240, Political Violence and Terrorism. Welcome to the Homeland Security program, and for most of you, welcome to George Washington University. I hope this course fulfills both your academic as well as your professional needs. I'm Rowan Sharma, and I will be your instructor for the next 8 weeks for this course. So, welcome to the course, welcome to the program, and I'm going to use YouTube for this 8-week course. I like how I can give a visual video face-to-face, and I'll do this every week from here on in. So if there's any issues with YouTube or accessing YouTube from wherever you are, please let me know. So again, welcome to the course, welcome to the program. Before I get into what this course is, I want to talk about what this course is not. This is not a course on force protection. This is not a course on link analysis. This is not a course on hostage rescue. If you're coming from the government or the military, you might have courses that are terrorism related, that are related to those kind of force protection issues that you're experienced with. This is not that type of course. This is a course on terrorism as a social and political phenomenon. We will cover history, we will cover politics, we will cover policy, we'll cover psychology, and we'll even have a little bit of philosophy thrown out there. So we're going to look at the terrorism phenomenon from all these academic perspectives. You should expect that in this course, and you should probably expect that going forward for the remainder of this program. So what I want to also talk about is that terrorism itself is probably the most politicized issue out there. It is filled with passion, it's filled with emotion, it's filled with politics, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And that kind of skews our vision of what terrorism is. And what I'm hoping you get from this class is what terrorism is beyond what you might see from the local news or from MSNBC or Fox News. I want you to have a greater understanding of the depth of terrorism from a historical point, from the counterterrorism point, from the actual terrorist points. We're gonna use several case studies there. They'll hopefully form your analysis as we see the terrorism threat morph from here on in. So, what I'll also say from an admin perspective from this course, again, those of you coming from the military or government, a lot of you might think I could click through courses and I get my certificate at the end. And a lot of people, again, there's a lot of courses in the government are like that. This course and all your courses are not going to be like that for this graduate program. This will require you to do the readings, to be prepared for the lectures, to listen to the lectures, to take notes on the lectures, to interact with your classmates in a professional and a detailed manner. It will require you to actually probably sit down every day and do either a reading or a lecture discussion or a paper. So again, get out of the mindset that you can just wait till the end and click through and take the final. This course is designed to be week to week to week so you can engage with the material as we go forward. So course layout. Again, this is an 8-week course that's really a 16-week course. So it's fast-paced, the readings are heavy. As I said, you will be doing work probably every day. It's not something you just push to the weekends. So this is something that will garner a lot of your time. So week 1, we're going to talk about terrorism as an existential threat. What I mean by that is there's a lot of rhetoric out there that terrorism is a threat to the way of life of the United States, that I've heard it's either ISIS or it's either us. I've heard that it's terrorism can destroy the American way of life. And we're going to ask that question in detail. Is terrorism really an existential threat? is the money that we provide to counterterrorism really worth it when compared to other public policy issues? And that will be our depth of discussion for week 1. Week 2 will be history part 1, and that will cover terrorism from really the post-World War II frame to now. If you grew up in 9/11 or grew up with Al-Qaeda, you probably only associate terrorism with Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Terrorism occurred long before the 1990s, the 2000s, long before 9/11, and we'll go into the history of it in part 1. And there's several readings, several documentaries that I think are worthy, that could give you a better understanding. And then part 2 is probably my favorite. Part 2 of week 2 is my favorite topic all week. It is, what is a terrorist? Some people think it's easy to define what terrorism is. You can see it on ISIS, you see it on Al-Qaeda. But in reality, what a terrorist is something we don't agree on among countries. We don't even agree on it within our government itself. So we're going to look at certain aspects of terrorism and say, why is this person a terrorist and not a freedom fighter or a criminal, or should be put in a different category? So we have a lot of fun with that. It's my favorite topic all of the course. Week 3, we're going to look at history part 2, which is really the road to 9/11. How did we get to 9/11? Not just 9/11, but for those of you who are old enough to remember, there was a lot of anger directed towards the United States, even celebration for 9/11 occurring again throughout the Middle East. And we're going to ask why. What were the historical, social, religious underpinnings of that perceived anger? And then we're going to look at terrorism finance, how terrorist groups fund themselves, and really focus on ISIS and how ISIS really provided the resources to conduct its reign of terror. Week 4, terrorism adaptation. We're going to do case studies of different terrorist groups and look at how they adapted. And we're going to ask the question, why are certain terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah still around 30, 35 years later and are still political entities, while other terrorist groups, and I'm going to argue ISIS, are going to be relegated to the dustbin of history? What decisions did the terrorist group make? Why were they successful while other terrorist groups were not? And then the second part, we're going to look at WMD terrorism, which I think is the only existential threat the United States faces. And we'll look at how a terrorist can use WMD and what are the feasibilities of that scenario actually occurring. So the second part, week 5, counterterrorism policy. We will look at U.S. counterterrorism policy from 9/11 to today. And then we'll look at comparative counterterrorism policy. We'll look at Israel. We'll look at Great Britain. We'll look at the EU and see what works, what doesn't work. What are the factors that lead certain groups to be successful or certain counterterrorism policies to be successful while others are not. Week 6 will be intelligence and counterterrorism. And this will look at how the intelligence tool is used to defeat terrorism. And we'll look at the 9/11 case study, and we'll look at the intelligence failure, if you think it's an intelligence failure, surrounding 9/11. And then we'll look at the post-9/11 incidents, the underwear bomber, for those of you who remember, the Fort Hood shooting of 2009, the recent European Union attacks, or the recent attacks in Western Europe by ISIS. And we'll look, did intel fail in those perspectives? Or is there a way to defeat the lone wolf terrorist that has been so prevalent over the last year or two? Week 7 will be the American jihadist threat. That is how ISIS can reach into the United States, or how ISIS has reached into the United States to affect disaffected Muslim youth and engaged into recruiting them for coming to Syria or even conducting attacks in the United States. And then we'll look at leadership targeting, high-value targeting, the use of drones and other mechanisms to actually eliminate leaders off the battlefield and the subsequent impacts on the terrorist groups. So week 8, I give you some time it's a little bit open-ended. You have the final paper in week 8, and then I'll give you the whole week to review for the final. So that's the course layout. What you're responsible for, your work products are as follows. Everyone will be doing 2 papers and 1 group presentation. And that's not clear in the syllabus, so I want to make sure it's clear here. And when you acknowledge you viewed this, please respond with how you see your papers and presentations. So this is how it's going to work. There are 3 total assignments. There's assignment 1 is due week 3, and that deals with definitions of terrorism. Assignment 2 is week 5, and that's WMD terrorism. And assignment 3 is the last day of class, and that's intelligence and counterterrorism. You will be broken up into groups. If you're in group 1, you will be doing a presentation for week 3, which is definitions of terrorism. You will not be doing a paper. So you'll be getting into a group, doing it over Adobe Connect or whatever mechanism you want to use, and you'll be doing a presentation. If you are not in group 1, you will be doing a paper. For week 5, if you're in group 2, you'll be doing a presentation. If you are not in group 2, you'll be doing a paper. And then for the final week, if you have done 2, you'll be in group 3, you'll be doing a presentation. If you're not in group 3, you'll be doing a paper. What I want to make clear, and I get this every week, every year, if you are doing a presentation, you will not be doing a paper that week. If you are doing a presentation, you will not be doing a paper that week. I'm going to make that abundantly clear. So how this is going to work, there's going to be 3 Adobe Connect sessions, and these are live video teleconference sessions. That's how you're going to present your group or your work. So during week 3, group 1, and we're going to do the Adobe Connect sessions on Thursday nights, we'll do their presentation. It's mandatory for the briefers, optional for everybody else. But I would recommend you attending those Adobe Connect sessions because you could see before you do your paper what the other groups are up to, what their lines of analysis are, and you could also interact with me, asking me any questions, or if you have any issues. Those would be considered office hours. So there'll be 3 Adobe Connect sessions, and I'll put out the groups and the Adobe Connect session dates and times during the first week of class. Weekly discussion board. So you will be doing a discussion board every week. Usually 2 questions a week. And I expect you to show me in those discussion boards that you've done the readings, listened to the lectures, brought in your own personal analysis, and you can interact with your classmates. So you can analyze what they've said and add to or critique what they say. That's what I want in your weekly discussion boards. I want you to think through, again, what you're going to, or every week, interact with the readings and the lectures, and show me on those discussion sections that you've done those assignments. There'll be a final exam. That will be the last weekend of the class. It is not a gotcha final exam. If you have studied for the final, or if you've done the discussion boards, if you've done the work, you'll do fine. It's not meant to be tricky. It's not meant to be extremely just difficult or out there. But you do have to study for it. So a little bit about me. I am the Senior Middle East Desk Officer for the Department of the Army. I provide the Army leadership with all sorts of analysis on the Middle East and counterterrorism issues. Before that, I was DTRA Red Team Analyst. DTRA is the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. They're at the WMD portion of the Department of Defense, and I did red teaming for them for several years. I was a TSA DHS analyst, and then I worked as a DoD analyst as a contractor for several years. And before that, I was an Army officer for 7 years. I've done the Iraq and Afghanistan things. And if you've deployed or are deployed overseas or you're in the military, I could definitely empathize with you. So that's the first week, YouTube first week. If there's any questions or issues, don't hesitate to ask, and I look forward to meeting you throughout the class.